And you don't know when he's going to get out, but it's an exciting time.
You know, when people ask me about the greatest college players I ever saw, I never think first about statistics. I think about what it felt like near the court watching a young man change the temperature in the building. I coached at North Carolina for 36 years, and I saw every kind of player this game could produce. Some overwhelmed you with size. Some beat you with intelligence. Some had that rare gift of making four teammates believe they were better than they really were. I coached Michael Jordan, competed against David Thompson and Ralph Sampson, and studied the UCLA teams led by John Wooden. So this is personal for me. These are not simply famous names. These are players who forced me to rethink practices, defenses, matchups, and sometimes my understanding of basketball. When I remember them now, I still see the games, the faces, and the pressure. The first college player I have to talk about is Bill Walton. I remember watching him at UCLA and thinking that he did not play center the way most young big men played center. He did not simply wait near the basket for someone to throw him the ball. He saw the whole floor. He understood angles, timing, spacing, and the next pass before the defense understood the first one. That was what impressed me most. Everybody remembers the 1,973 championship game against Memphis State, and they should. Bill made 21 of 22 shots that night. But when I studied the film, I was not just watching the shots go in. I was watching how calm he remained, how quickly he made decisions, and how completely he trusted John Wooden's system. That kind of discipline is rare in a player with that much talent. He could have demanded the ball every possession. Instead, he moved it, screened, passed, defended, and let the game come to him. As a coach that gets your attention, UCLA had already built a standard that every program in America respected, but Walton made that standard feel almost unreachable. He was not only tall and skilled, he was connected to every part of the game. If a guard cut too soon, Bill saw it. If a defender leaned the wrong way, Bill punished it. If a teammate was open, the ball arrived on time. I always believe the best players make the coach's ideas clear on the floor, and Walton did that better than almost anyone I ever watched. There was also a seriousness about him. You could see that he cared about playing the game correctly. Not perfectly, because nobody does that, but correctly. He competed with pride, and he carried the responsibility of being the center of a great team without turning the game into a personal show. That mattered to me. College basketball is supposed to be about five men functioning together under pressure, and Walton represented that better than many stars who scored more difficult baskets. I also admired the way he defended. He changed shots without chasing blocks, controlled the boards, and started offense with intelligent outlet passes. He made UCLA faster without looking rushed. That is a special gift for a center. People sometimes talk about dominant players as if domination must always be loud. Bill's domination was often quiet. He would make the proper play again and again until suddenly the other team realized it had no good answers left. Even when UCLA's 88-game winning streak ended at Notre Dame in 1974, I did not think less of him. Players are not defined by never losing. They are defined by the standard they establish before and after defeat. When I think about the greatest college players, I think about who forced coaches to reconsider what was possible. Bill Walton did that. He showed that a center could be the smartest passer on the court, the strongest defensive presence, and the emotional anchor of a championship team. I never coached him, but I studied him closely, and I respected the way he played. Bill Walton made basketball look organized, generous, and powerful all at once. That is why he belongs on this list. The next college player I want to talk about is David Thompson. I saw him often enough to know that the film never captured the full feeling of him. You had to be in the building. You had to watch the crowd rise before he even touched the ball, because everybody understood that something could happen in the next few seconds that they had never seen before. David played at NC State from 1972 to 1975, and during those years, he made the ACC feel smaller. Every coach knew where he was. Every defender knew the assignment. It still did not matter. He was quicker off the floor than anyone I had seen, and he had that rare ability to stay balanced while playing above everybody else. People called him Skywalker, and that name fit, but what impressed me was not only the jumping, it was the control. David could explode toward the basket, adjust in the air, and still finish with touch. That required strength, timing, and remarkable body awareness. We faced NC State during one of the strongest periods in ACC history, and preparing for Thompson was never comfortable. If you played him too tightly, he could beat the first defender. If you gave him space, he could rise into the shot. If help came late, he was already at the rim. I remember our staff discussing him the way coaches discuss a problem with no perfect solution. You were not trying to stop him completely. You were trying to make every possession difficult and hoping the pressure would eventually wear him down. Most nights it did not. The 1974 season remains the clearest picture of his greatness. NC State entered the NCAA tournament carrying enormous expectations, and David delivered. In the national semifinal against UCLA, he helped end the championship run of a program that had ruled college basketball for years. That game went into double overtime, and the pressure was extraordinary. Yet David never looked frightened by the moment. He played with confidence, but not recklessness. He trusted his athletic ability, and he trusted the work behind it. 2 nights later, NC State defeated Marquette for the national championship. For people in North Carolina, that was not some distant national story. We lived inside that rivalry. We understood exactly how difficult that accomplishment was. David gave his team belief before the opening tip. He changed the emotional balance of a game because opponents knew one mistake could become 2 points before they recovered. I respected him because he was not simply a spectacular athlete. He was a serious basketball player. He defended, rebounded, moved without the ball, and competed every possession. The highlights made him famous, but the discipline made him great. When I think about the most difficult college players to prepare for, David is near the top. He stretched the imagination of the sport. He showed that a wing player could dominate above the rim without losing skill, intelligence, or team responsibility. I coached against many talented young men in the ACC, but David Thompson created a kind of tension that was different. You felt that one possession could shift the entire building. Very few players ever had that effect. David did, and he fully earned every bit of the respect coaches gave him. The next college player I want to talk about is Ralph Sampson. The first time I studied him, I remember thinking that a young man that tall was not supposed to move that easily. Ralph was 7 feet 4 inches, but he did not play like someone trapped by his size. He could run, catch, pass, turn over either shoulder, and recover defensively in a way that made normal game plans feel incomplete. When Virginia came into an arena with Ralph in the middle, every coach had to make a decision before the game started. Were you going to challenge him inside and risk having your shots changed all night, or were you going to pull away from the basket and become something your team was not used to being? That was the problem he created. He forced you to change before the opening tip. I watched him closely from 1,979 through 1,983, and what stood out was how much pressure he put on both ends without needing the ball. Every possession, he could score, of course, but his presence was often more important than the points. Guards would turn the corner, see him waiting, and hesitate. Big men would rush moves they had made comfortably all season. Rebounders would start thinking about where he was instead of where the ball was going. That influence does not always show up in a box score, but coaches feel it immediately. Our games with Virginia during those years were demanding because Ralph gave them such a clear identity. They could defend with patience because they knew he was behind them. They could play through difficult stretches because one lob, one offensive rebound, or one block shot could settle the whole team. In 1981, Virginia reached the Final Four, and by then, everybody in the country understood what kind of player he had become. He won National Player of the Year 3 straight times, and that was not reputation. He earned it because every season he carried the same burden and still kept improving. What I respected most was that he never looked careless with his gifts. He did not spend every possession trying to prove that he was the tallest man in the building. That showed maturity. We tried different looks against him, different coverages, different ways to make him work before the catch, but there was no comfortable answer. A player that long usually gives up quickness. Ralph did not. A player that's skilled usually gives up physical presence. Ralph did not. He made the game feel unfair without playing selfishly. I also remember the composure. The ACC could be unforgiving. Every road crowd was loud, every opponent was prepared, and every weakness was studied. Ralph handled that attention year after year. He knew every team had built part of its week around stopping him. He still remained steady. When people ask me why I rank him this high, I tell them that greatness is not only what a player does, it is what he makes everyone else do. Ralph Sampson changed lineups, spacing, shot selection, and confidence. He made coaches think differently and made players question decisions they normally trusted. Very few college players ever controlled a game before touching the ball. Ralph did that almost every night. The next college player I want to talk about is Michael Jordan. Now, Michael is different for me because I did not study him from another bench. I watched him grow in our gym every day. When he arrived at North Carolina in 1981, he was talented, competitive, and eager, but he was not yet the player the world would later know. What I remember most is how badly he wanted to improve. Michael did not simply want praise. He wanted correction. He wanted to know where he had been late, where his footwork had broken down, where he had missed a teammate, what he needed to do the next morning. That kind of hunger is difficult to teach. We could give him structure, but the fire belonged to him. People naturally remember the shot against Georgetown in the 1982 national championship game. He was a freshman, the game was tight, and when the ball came to him on the left side, he rose and made the shot. That moment changed how the country saw him, but inside our program, we had already seen signs of it. Michael did not hide from responsibility. He wanted the moment, but he also understood that the moment came from 5 men executing together. James Worthy drew attention, our offense created the space, and Michael completed the possession. That mattered to me because basketball is never one man standing alone, even when history remembers one shot. Over the next 2 seasons, Michael became stronger, smarter, and far more complete. He defended with pride. He rebounded. He learned how to read opponents instead of relying only on athletic ability. In practice, he could turn a routine drill into a personal challenge. Sometimes I had to remind him that winning every small competition was not the only purpose. The purpose was learning, but that competitiveness also raised everybody around him. Teammates understood that if Michael was going full speed, they had to meet him there. By 1984, he had become the National Player of the Year. But what impressed me most was how much work existed behind that recognition. He was not finished, and he knew it. I have heard people say that I was the only person who ever held Michael below 20 points a game. I always considered that line amusing. My responsibility was not to limit him. My responsibility was to teach him how to make the correct play, how to trust the offense, and how to become dependable at both ends. Michael accepted coaching because he wanted the truth. He might not enjoy every correction in the moment, but he would return the next day ready to prove he had learned it. That is one reason I respected him so deeply. His greatest gift was not jumping or scoring. It was the ability to turn criticism into fuel. I coached many wonderful players, but Michael possessed a competitive spirit that never settled. Even when he succeeded, he immediately searched for the next weakness. Watching him become a complete college player was one of the great privileges of my career. I knew he was special. I did not know how far he would go, but I knew he would never stop asking more of himself. And the greatest college player I ever saw was Lou Alcindor. I can still remember preparing North Carolina to face UCLA in the 1968 national championship game and knowing that every normal answer felt incomplete. We had a very good team. We had experience, discipline, and belief. But UCLA had Lou, and that changed the shape of the game before the ball was tipped. He was not simply a tall center standing near the basket. He was coordinated, patient, intelligent, and comfortable making decisions under pressure. When we studied him, we saw a young man who could score over either shoulder, protect the rim without chasing every block, rebound in traffic, and pass quickly enough to punish a double team. That combination made him different. In the championship game, UCLA beat us 78-55, and Lou scored 34 points. I remember the frustration of watching good defensive possessions end with him making a shot anyway. Sometimes we forced him away from his preferred spot. Sometimes we brought help at the proper time. He still found a way to finish or create something for a teammate. That is when a coach understands he is dealing with more than talent. He is dealing with control. Lou controlled where the defense stood when help arrived and what shots everyone else on the floor was allowed to take. People often mention that college basketball prohibited the dunk during his years at UCLA. Whatever anyone thinks about that rule, Lou adapted. He developed touch, balance, footwork, and that sweeping hook that later became so closely associated with him. The restriction did not reduce him. It made him more complete. That impressed me. Great players do not complain that the game has become difficult. They learn how to solve the new problem. Under John Wooden, Lou won 3 consecutive national championships from 1,967 through 1,969. UCLA, lost only 2 games during his varsity career. Those numbers sound almost impossible now, but they reflected more than physical superiority. He understood team basketball. He ran the floor, defended, passed, and accepted the responsibility that came with being the most recognizable player in the country. Every opponent built its game plan around him, and he remained composed. I respected that because the pressure on a young college player can become enormous. Lou carried attention from the media, from crowds, from opponents, and from the larger world outside basketball. Yet when the game began, his decisions were usually simple and correct. I have always believed that the greatest players make difficult basketball look clear. Lou did that. He did not waste movement. He did not need to prove himself on every possession. He waited, read the defense, and punished the mistake. Michael Jordan became the greatest player I ever coached, and I will always feel fortunate for that relationship. But when the question is strictly about the greatest college player I ever saw, I have to be honest. Lou Alcindor established a standard that no one else quite reached. I saw him across the floor with a championship at stake, and I understood exactly how great he was. He made an excellent team feel ordinary through precision rather than showmanship. That lesson stayed with me completely because a coach never forgets the player who reveals the limits of preparation. When I look back now, I do not remember these men only as names in record books. I remember the feeling they created. Bill Walton made the game look intelligent and generous. David Thompson made every building feel alive before he even left the floor. Ralph Sampson changed the geometry of every possession. Michael Jordan showed me what happens when talent accepts discipline and never stops asking for more. And Lou Alcindor gave me the clearest example of complete dominance I ever saw in college basketball. What connects all 5 is not fame, it is responsibility. Each one carried the weight of expectation and still found a way to make the game larger than himself. That matters to me. College basketball is at its best when talent serves the team, when preparation meets pressure, and when a player understands that greatness is not just about what he can do, it is about what he allows everyone around him to become. I was fortunate to coach in an era filled with extraordinary players, brilliant coaches, and unforgettable games. I learned from victories, but I also learned from the nights when another player showed us something we could not solve. Those lessons stayed with me. So when people ask me for the greatest college players I ever saw, these are the 5 I return to. Different bodies, different styles, different stories. But every one of them changed the way I understood the game. And that is the highest compliment I can offer.